Hi, it's Sam's Bulldog. I just wanted to provide a quick update for how things are going, calling out intellectual dishonesty on YouTube in the form of lying about others' views, others' public views. It's actually been going pretty well considering the effort. I had what I would describe as two successes, frankly three, but two were I persuaded two YouTube channel owners to stop trolling Sam Harris. In both cases, they simply were using him as a way to get eyes. And for example, one guy is calling his podcast The Cult of Sam Harris. He doesn't know who Sam Harris is. He just picked him because he wants to look smart. Okay, I argued that since you are just tailgating there, why not just tell us what you're doing and not use someone else's reputation that you don't even know. And he did a 20-minute video addressed to me, and he changed it, so I resubscribed. I don't have his name in front of me. I apologize. There was another. Anyway, that guy had several, I think, a few hundred followers, something like that, a couple hundred. I frankly don't remember. Then another guy with a small amount of followers did the same thing. He might have only had 20 or 10 or something. These are small victories as far as I'm concerned. When people ask me why am I doing it, that's the reason, and it's incredibly pleasurable. So while I work on the other more difficult cases, in other words, those just not using Sam as a prop, with no other thought involved, and again, it's Sam and others, I can and will be doing the same thing for others, as I've explained. So, third, I believe, changed what she was doing after I told her that everything she said about Sam, quoting she provided me the Murtaza Hussain article from Salon. That was the extent of her information on Sam Harris, and she went on what I would describe as a quote-unquote feminist tirade against him, every which position of which he would have agreed with her on. He agrees with her on publicly. So she got it all wrong, and I begged her to go to another resource, Sam's website, which explicitly states that Melania was the sort of person that has to win the Nobel, and that Murtaza Hussain interpreted that paragraph to quote Sam Harris slimes or maligns Melania. So I considered that a small victory, and why not? So lastly, in my current attack of, I hate to use the word attack, my public observations about the tactics of Hunter Motz, troll extraordinaire, has put me in touch with a guy named Shane Kennedy in Ottawa, who is we are interested in the same type of topics. I believe he or I enjoyed one of each other's tweets about Hunter Motz, although by the text of his other tweets, we certainly weren't agreeing on anything. Long story short, we've spoken about 12 hours, I would say, perhaps. And it got really productive in the last hour, as amazing as that sounds. I mean, that was a living demonstration last night that you can bring all the goodwill you want to a conversation, and you're still feeling around for hours on end before it gets interesting. It's a skill, and it's hard. So, long story short, I was put in the position to have to defend the views about the non-existence of libertarian free will, considering our deterministic universe as best we can describe it, how it invalidates it, and once you surrender, once you identify that long chain of causality that ends in darkness 14.8 billion years ago, you see what gets introduced into your mind is culpability. Seems to be watered down the more the past comes into focus. Why does that matter? Revenge, anger, hatred toward those that do wrong doesn't make sense in light of the fact of a deterministic universe. So it actually matters that we understand that it's impossible. The only ones pushing that free will exists are those that say it colloquially, as we all do, or most of us, and the faith heads. It's your fault. You murdered. You had free will. You're going to hell. To the certainty that can't be true in a deterministic universe is a pleasure to think about, but it's hard to convey. And Shane Kennedy was kind enough to listen to me for 5 or 10 straight minutes, which is a burden. And I explained 2 scenarios that Sam uses. Doesn't need to be Sam. The clock tower shooter with the brain tumor, and your garden variety murderer who burns a house down to get insurance money and kill the family that's inconveniently going to want some of it, after months of research on how to start an undetectable fire. We certainly look extremely differently at the intent going on there. But free will doesn't enter into it because neither of them have it. They can't. And that raises the implications of the illogical, emotional, yet very difficult to avoid desire for retributive, to make things right, to somehow get the justice, moral accountability, and so on. Here's the thing. Once you understand that, every dogma that promises something that they can't promise, i.e. an afterlife, okay, you couldn't, no one can, the only people pushing it are the ones that refuse to acknowledge that things happen in a certain way in this universe. An egg shell breaks after you drop it. It never goes the other way. Could it in principle? Of course it could. But it's really, 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 really unlikely. That's what determinism is. An explosion happens, then there's a sound. The sound isn't first, and then the explosion. It seems absurdly obvious, okay? And it's hard to connect with the fact that the cause before that explosion had a cause, and the causes that contributed to the state of the universe before that had a cause, and then you get into a regression all the way back to the Big Bang. There's no way to step outside of causality and be an uncaused cause in our universe. How could it be? How could it be? Only postulating something unlike us. Then you're putting on your science fiction hat or your Christian dogma hat and so on. There's no there. There can't be. it's very hard to convey. It took me months to get my head around it. Listened a lot, read a lot, and what I had was a willing participant in a conversation that had his own ideas about free will. You have to define free will, agree on what we're talking about in free will, and then move on, and then get to the point while it's so important. This is hard. And Sean credited me and thanked me for doing it, for us doing it together in one shot. I went step by step. That and another example, again, I use Sam's, doesn't matter. Pick a movie, any movie, right? Is free will here? I'm asking you to pick a movie, any movie. So if you don't have a free choice here, where could free will be? And I demonstrated in 5 minutes that most people's operating definition of free will in 5 minutes can be demonstrated to be impossible. So it's alarming to some people. It certainly was to me at the beginning. It just didn't seem possible, and now it seems the other way, now that I've learned what the story is. So I just want to shout out to Shane Kennedy for listening to me last night. I want to thank him, listening to him. We've gotten to this place where we're now going to talk about collaboration. He's got his ideas, I got mine, but we both want a better world, and we both understand that a universal conception of well-being is a goal worth fighting for. So, and how do we do it? It might just well be the hardest problem anybody tried to think about, as far as I'm concerned. But we're doing it because we love it and it's fun. And I had the pleasure last night of explaining in a 20-minute part of a conversation that free will can exist, and then you can't have a little of it. You either have it or you don't. That was a pleasure to me. It takes a long time to be able to persuade any willing participant of something so seemingly impossible, so seemingly central to our lives. We are atomized machines. There's no other way to look at it. In the realest sense that we can possibly describe, we are atomized machines. And that unsettles people sometimes, and they reject it. Certainly the Pope would, and every believing Catholic, and anybody who subscribes to the absurd contention that a murderer deserves hell for eternity, because he really went overboard, so he really gets the real treatment, the real good, the rack and so on. That cannot be true in this universe. In other universes, or in wormholes, or the event horizon, or time machines, and a host of other things like Star Trek episodes, awesome, yes, maybe, fine. Right now, it's seemingly incontrovertible, and I was able to convey that. What a pleasure. Shane Kennedy, I thank you for our conversation, and I hope they continue.